Welcome to the Peachtree Podcast. Peachtree Learning Center is a nonprofit in Middle Tennessee dedicated to training and discipling students in all the fine arts to become excellent and skilled in order to spread the kingdom of God into the world of the arts. On this podcast, we will discuss topics designed to encourage, uplift, educate, and equip people to proclaim the kingdom more deeply in their own families and communities. Welcome back. We are excited about the fact that the weather has broken a little bit around here and it's cooler and less humid, and we're enjoying seeing people come in not quite so sweaty and panicked after being outside in the heat when they've been playing out near our picnic shed. This summer it got so hot that it was hard to keep the big room even cooled off for camps. So it's been really a lovely blessing to enjoy a little bit cooler weather. And so welcome to fall. This is the early part of fall, but it's one of my favorites, honestly. I love watching the trees get ready to turn and still be full of their leaves. That's just the best time of year, I think, and watching the temperatures fall as well. And looking ahead for the school year, we've got quite a slate of activities and great workshops and thoughtful events. And I'm super excited about all the things that we have to bring to bear for people to use in equipping themselves and their children and their families for living in this present age. One of the things that I've talked about before and I'm going to revisit today is the idea of inculcating good taste in your children. And one thing I know as a mom, I remember being told that you shouldn't introduce fruit terribly early in your child's diet, partly because of enzymes and that kind of thing that make it a little bit hard to digest some of those fruits, but also because if they start off with a taste for sweet things, that they will have a harder time getting a taste for vegetables. And I actually saw this lived out because I kind of cheated a little bit and introduced fruit early to one of my children, and then it was hard for her to go back and think about eating a can of peas or any mashed up vegetables. She wasn't interested at all. She wanted the fruit. But that applies on several levels. So if you let them eat candy, then they don't want to eat their meat and vegetables. If you let them eat only bread and carbs, they never want to eat protein and vitamin-ridden foods. And that's a very important principle on other planes as well. So if you let them watch silliness on movies and TV shows, then they're never going to want to watch a Shakespeare adaptation. It's going to be a lot harder for them to develop the taste for that. And today's thought was about reading in particular, and it's because we have an upcoming event in January with a very qualified and actually famous person coming in January to speak at an author's workshop we're going to do. We're going to have several authors who have been featured in the New York Times and other bestseller lists who live around here. And this lady is another person who's moved here and has a very fantastically successful career, but is a devout woman of God. And we're going to be speaking to several different topics, but one of them being the idea that helping your children develop a good taste for good literature is much better than just reading pages in a book and possibly just reading for the sake of reading. And that goes back to kind of eating for the sake of eating. It's not the same. All calories are not created equal, and all books are not created equal. All movies are not created equal. All stories are not created equal. A lot of people write books just to have something for young people to read. And honestly, one of the things that I think is despicable about the way bookstores, especially big box stores, cater to children is segmenting off a section for what they call young adults or junior high. That's crazy because a good story is good for all ages. And I really discovered that myself when I was reading books to my children and thoroughly enjoying well-written historical fiction for probably 8 to 12-year-olds. It was written in very good language. They had good vocabulary applied, and yet the story was so absorbing that I found myself wanting to read ahead on my own when they were in bed because it was such a great book. I really got captivated by a lot of literature that I had no idea existed, and we have so cordoned off sections of childhood into categories that we think we have to apply as if they're products being made in a factory. And that is such a lie. Good books should be enjoyed by all ages, and they should be good because they're empirically good. And for that reason, I think it's very important to choose what you let your children imbibe. I think Little House on the Prairie is good for every age, including toddlers. They get used to the rhythm of the words and the language. It's not overly challenging vocabulary, but the stories are compelling. They're true. They're told in a very sweet flavor, and everyone can enjoy revisiting the late 1800s in America and seeing what it was like to live on the prairie and seeing why those families moved around as much as they did, and just the mindsets of the people were so different. It gives you a glimpse into a different time and a different place, and even on many levels, a different culture right here in our own country. There are lots of series like that. The Narnia series we read out loud to our children when they were 4 and 6. And yes, the language was challenging, and yes, we stopped to explain certain words or explain phrases or characters and why they were doing what they were doing. But those were great conversations, and my children have never gotten over reading those stories. They so enveloped them and just drank them in that they became part of their fiber. And so when I look at people reading, other children reading, silliness at those ages, I think they're inculcating a taste for candy, and this is brain candy, and they're not going to want to go forward and read more important or more thoughtful or more thought-provoking works. They're not going to want to do the harder things because they've been taught to do the easy things first. I even had a child that struggled to read really hard, and I really didn't know at the time that there could be a label applied and we could go have testing done. I just knew it was hard for her. But we pushed forward, and I read with her every day for sometimes 2 hours. We would read, and I would just continually push and continually encourage. And I didn't stop at the easy levels. I wanted her to be able to read everything. And by the time she was in high school, she was reading Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and Erasmus and those big authors from early days. And it was so fascinating to watch her brain be able to expand and understand histories and cultures, and more importantly, God's overarching story for the world through the gift of those old books. It's been so wonderful to see how He has rooted and grounded her in her faith and also in her understanding of the way the world works just through reading good books. So I would urge you, truly compellingly, to consider what you put in front of your really small children even. There are great picture books. There are great books that tell stories. And we've talked about this on this podcast before, but it's just been on my mind again since we're working on this author's workshop. They're going to be talking about this. We have a couple of young authors coming who have already been published and put into stores and put in on Amazon's bestseller lists. And they are writing very thoughtful literature for young and older minds because they've been taught that, and they understand the need for that, and they've been given a gift of writing, and they're very intuitive people, and they write really well. I'm excited about putting those people in front of our students and having a panel at some point during the day of all the authors, and letting people ask questions of how to write, and how did you know you wanted to write, and what was the overarching theme? How did you understand a story arc, and how do you make that happen? We're going to get into some of those nuts and bolts, but we're also going to have a workshop with a couple of very powerful authors speaking only to why it's important to read good books and not just put books themselves out. There's no intrinsic value in something simply because it's been published. Certainly not in this day and age. Publishers are not discerning whatsoever. But going back and finding good books that are written by people who have great characters in mind or understand the way the world works is something that's a very powerful tool in shaping your children and the way they think. And honestly, the most important gift you could give your child today, I think, is to be able to love the Lord, understand how to think, and read good books. If they can do those things, they are going to be held in good stead, and He will not let their feet fall. So I'm excited to share more about all these events with you, especially our authors event. It'll be coming up in January, it looks like, but we're already prepping that and getting ready for what that might look like. Be watching our website and our socials for lots of events coming up, and hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you so much for joining us today. To support this podcast, please go follow us on your podcast platform of choice. And if you're interested in knowing more about the work of Peachtree, please go visit our website at peachtreelearningcenter.com for more information.